You wake exhausted. Again. The alarm shatters what little rest you manage to claim. Your mind already races with the day's battles before your feet touch the floor. You reach for coffee like a weapon, scroll through notifications like reconnaissance, and tell yourself this is what it takes. This is the price of ambition. This is strength. The samurai would call you a fool, not because you work hard, not because you push yourself, but because you have confused depletion with dedication. You have mistaken the slow burn of exhaustion for the controlled fire of warrior readiness. In 17th century Japan, a samurai who carried himself this way would not survive his first real engagement. He would fall not to a superior opponent, but to his own mismanagement of the one resource that determined everything: recovery. Listen closely. The warrior's relationship with rest is not what you think it is. It is not about sleeping more. It is not about meditation apps or morning routines or any other repackaged productivity gospel. It is about understanding a fundamental truth that modern men have forgotten. Exhaustion is not a badge of honor. It is a tactical failure. In 1645, Miyamoto Musashi wrote in the Go-Rin no Sho, the Book of Five Rings, that the warrior must maintain the everyday mind in times of difficulty. Not the frantic mind, not the depleted mind, the everyday mind. This was not philosophical poetry. This was tactical instruction. A samurai who entered combat sleep-deprived, whose hands trembled from fatigue, whose perception narrowed from mental depletion, this man was already defeated. His sword might be sharp, but his edge was gone. The difference between warrior fatigue and modern exhaustion is intent. A samurai trained until his body screamed. He endured cold, hunger, and relentless physical conditioning. But this suffering had a purpose, and more importantly, it had a recovery protocol. Every push had its corresponding rest. Every exertion was followed by deliberate restoration. The modern man pushes and pushes and pushes, then collapses into distracted half-sleep, scrolling his phone until his eyes blur, his rest as fragmented as his focus. You are not recovering. You are merely stopping. The samurai viewed sleep as tactical preparation. Before the Battle of Sekigahara in 1600, warriors on both sides were documented practicing what they called the art of the empty mind before full engagement. They did not pace nervously. They did not strategize endlessly. They rested with the same discipline they brought to combat. Because they understood what you are only beginning to learn. The warrior who controls his recovery controls his fate. Your enemy is not the difficult client, the demanding boss, or the mountain of responsibilities. Your enemy is the lie that rest is weakness. Your enemy is the belief that true strength means never sheathing your sword. The katana that never returns to its scabbard does not stay sharp. It dulls. It rusts. Eventually, it breaks. Modern exhaustion is insidious because it feels like commitment. It feels like you are doing what must be done. But warrior fatigue was different. It was earned in purposeful exertion and recovered through purposeful rest. The samurai did not glorify being tired. They glorified being ready. And readiness required something you have abandoned, the warrior's discipline of strategic recovery. This is where we begin. Not with techniques, not with steps, but with the fundamental reorientation of how you understand rest itself. Sleep is not the absence of work. It is the foundation of all work that matters. The word Inemuri translates roughly as sleeping while present, but translation flattens what practice reveals. In the Edo period, from 1603 to 1868, this was not simply napping. It was a cultivated skill that separated the disciplined warrior from the merely trained soldier. A samurai could rest in the presence of his lord, in the corner of a strategy meeting, even in the saddle during long campaigns. And this was not disrespect. It was mastery. The distinction is critical. Inemuri was never unconsciousness. It was controlled rest with maintained awareness. Your modern sleep is collapse, a surrender to depletion where the world disappears and anything could happen around you. The samurai's rest was tactical, a voluntary dimming of active thought, while the sentinel of awareness remained at its post. This is why samurai could practice Inemuri in public spaces without vulnerability. Some part of them never fully disengaged from their environment. Historical records from the Hagakure, compiled by Yamamoto Tsunetomo in 1716, describe retainers who mastered the art of resting between their lord's audiences. They would lower themselves into a state of profound stillness. Their breathing would deepen, their facial muscles would relax, but their hand never strayed far from their sword. This was not paranoia. This was the understanding that a warrior exists in a permanent state of potential engagement. Rest does not mean abandoning readiness. It means recovering while remaining capable. The Zen influence on samurai culture made this possible. Zazen meditation taught warriors to observe their own consciousness without being consumed by it. A monk could sit in meditation for hours, appearing asleep to the untrained eye, while remaining fully aware of sounds, movements, and shifts in the atmosphere around him. The samurai adapted this principle. They learned to let their exhausted minds rest while their trained instincts continued their vigil. In 1615, after the siege of Osaka Castle, the victorious Tokugawa forces were documented practicing group Inemuri in the camp, warriors resting in formation, their awareness collectively maintained so that individual rest never compromised group security. One man's deep recovery was protected by another's light awareness, and they rotated this responsibility with the same precision they brought to guard duty. This was not luck or natural talent. This was systematic training in the architecture of recovery. You live in a different kind of siege. Your castle is your attention, and it is under constant assault. Notifications, demands, the endless scroll of manufactured urgency. You have no protocol for Inemuri because you have no training in controlled awareness. Your rest is either full collapse or anxious half-presence. You cannot truly sleep because your mind will not release the day. You cannot truly wake because your body never fully recovered. The samurai solution was brutal in its simplicity. Train the division between consciousness and presence. Your thinking mind, the part that plans and worries and strategizes, this can rest. This must rest. But the aware mind, the part that notices, that senses, that remains connected to the present moment, this stays engaged at a low frequency. Not active, not working, simply present. This is why Inemuri worked in public spaces. The samurai was not vulnerable because he was not truly absent. His recovery was real, his nervous system genuinely downshifted, his mental fatigue genuinely addressed, but the warrior underneath remained. A sudden sound, a shift in energy, an approaching presence. These would register, not as thoughts, but as sensations that could pull him back to full alertness in a heartbeat if threat emerged. You need this now more than ever, not because you face armed enemies, but because the modern battlefield demands exactly what destroyed ancient warriors who lacked discipline, sustained readiness without the skill of tactical recovery. You cannot maintain your edge if you never truly rest. And you cannot truly rest if you have not trained the part of you that can remain present while your exhausted mind finally, mercifully, goes quiet. The samurai did not rest randomly. They did not simply collapse when fatigue overwhelmed them. Recovery was systematized, broken into 3 pillars that together created what they called Mushin no Kyukei, rest of no mind. The first pillar was mental stillness. The second was body positioning. The third was environmental mastery. Miss any one of these and your recovery remained incomplete. Master all 3, and you could restore yourself in a fraction of the time lesser men required. Mental stillness began with what Takuan Soho, the sword master and Zen monk, called Fudoshin in 1630, the immovable mind. But immovable did not mean rigid. It meant untroubled by passing thoughts. Before a samurai could enter Inemuri, he had to release the grip of planning mind. Not suppress it, not fight it, release it. The difference is everything. When you suppress thought, you create tension. When you release thought, you create the emptiness that allows true rest. The technique was simple but demanded practice. The warrior would focus on his breathing, not controlling it, but observing it. Breath moving in, breath moving out. When thoughts arose, and they always arose, he would acknowledge them without engagement, like clouds crossing the sky. Present, then gone. No samurai expected his mind to go blank instantly. That is the amateur's fantasy. The master knew that stillness came from not feeding the thoughts that appeared. Eventually, the mental chatter would exhaust itself. Then rest could truly begin. Body positioning was the second pillar, and here the samurai were ruthlessly practical. The seiza position, kneeling with weight distributed across the shins and feet, allowed for both rest and rapid mobilization. This was not comfort. This was tactical geometry. A samurai in seiza could rise to combat readiness in less than 2 seconds. Try it yourself. Kneel properly, then explode upward. Your body understands immediately why this position survived 4 centuries of warrior culture. But seiza was not the only position. On campaign, samurai slept in what was called the hanza, half-sitting position, with the back against a tree or wall, sword across the lap, one leg extended and one drawn in. This position prevented deep sleep that left a warrior vulnerable, but allowed enough rest to restore function. Your spine stays relatively straight. Your major muscle groups remain slightly engaged. Your awareness, even in rest, maintains a thread of readiness. The third pillar, environmental mastery, separated those who merely rested from those who recovered completely. In 1691, the samurai administrator Ogyu Sorai wrote detailed protocols for rest environments. Darkness when possible. Minimal sound, cool temperature. These were not preferences. These were requirements for the nervous system to fully disengage from vigilance mode. A warrior who tried to rest in bright light, surrounded by noise and chaos, might close his eyes, but his body would remain in a state of low-grade activation. His muscles would not fully release. His heart rate would not properly decrease. His recovery would be partial at best. The samurai controlled what they could control. On the battlefield, this might mean only finding the quietest section of camp. In the Lord's castle, this meant knowing which corridors carried less foot traffic during rest periods. In their own homes, this meant creating specific spaces used only for rest, never for planning, never for conflict, never for administrative work. The body learns association. Enter a space where you have only ever rested, and your nervous system begins the downshift before you even lie down. These 3 pillars worked in concert. Mental stillness prepared the mind. Body positioning balanced restoration with readiness. Environmental mastery gave the nervous system permission to truly recover. Together, they created what modern sleep science now confirms. Recovery is not just about duration. It is about depth, quality, and the body's felt sense of safety. The samurai understood this 300 years before your sleep-tracking devices tried to teach it to you. Now you translate 4 centuries of warrior wisdom into the warfare you actually face. The principles remain identical. The battlefield has changed. Your enemy is not an opposing army. It is distraction, chronic activation, and the corrupted belief that constant availability equals strength. Here is how you reclaim your recovery. First, establish your Inemuri practice during the day. You cannot master strategic rest when exhaustion has already defeated you. Between 1200 and 1300 hours, find 15 minutes. Not for scrolling, not for calls, for tactical recovery. Sit in a chair with your spine straight, feet flat on the ground, hands resting on your thighs. Close your eyes. This is not sleep. This is controlled dimming. Set a timer if you must, but the goal is not unconsciousness. It is the state between waking and sleep where your nervous system downshifts, but your awareness remains tethered. Your breath becomes your anchor. Count 4 seconds in, hold for 4, release for 6. The extended exhale signals safety to your body. Repeat this until the timer releases you. Do this daily for 30 days, same time, same position. Your nervous system will learn the pattern. Eventually, you will drop into recovery states in under 3 minutes that previously took you 30. Second, implement the warrior's evening protocol. 1 hour before sleep, all screens go dark. Not dimmed. Dark. The samurai did not have your phone, but they understood that the mind cannot rest while still receiving input. Your evening hour is for preparation, not stimulation. Dim your lights. Lower the temperature in your room to between 60 and 67 degrees, the range your body requires for deep sleep architecture. If you share your space, negotiate this boundary like your life depends on it, because functionally it does. A warrior who cannot control his rest environment cannot control anything else. Your sleeping position matters more than comfort. Forget what feels good. Remember what works. Sleep on your back or your right side, positions that keep your spine aligned and your breathing unrestricted. The samurai favored the right side because it kept the heart uncompressed and the sword arm, their left, free. You may not carry a blade, but the principle holds. Your body recovers most efficiently when your structure supports function, not when you contort yourself around momentary comfort. Third, create what the samurai called mei, the intentional space between efforts. Your modern schedule is back-to-back warfare with no space between engagements. Meetings bleed into calls that bleed into tasks that bleed into obligations. This is not productivity. This is tactical incompetence. Between every significant effort, insert 5 minutes of nothing. Stand. Breathe. Look at something distant to reset your visual focus. Drink water. Move your body through its full range of motion. The samurai did this between training sessions, between audiences, between every distinct phase of the day. They understood that recovery is not a single event at night. It is a constant practice of strategic disengagement and re-engagement. Fourth, protect your morning. The first hour after you wake determines your nervous system's baseline for the entire day. If you reach for your phone immediately, scroll through problems you cannot solve at that moment, flood your system with cortisol before you have even stood, you have already lost. The samurai began with cold water on the face and neck, then mobility movements, then focused breathwork, then tea prepared with deliberate attention. This was not ritual for ritual's sake. This was nervous system calibration. Your modern version, cold water, 5 minutes of movement, controlled breathing, then a single task completed before any input. No phone, no news, no email. You are setting your operating frequency for the day. Fifth, practice micro-Inemuri throughout your day. 2 minutes of eyes closed, spine straight, breath controlled, between tasks, in your car before entering a meeting, in the bathroom stall if you must. These micro-recoveries prevent the accumulation of stress that leads to complete depletion. The samurai called these seiki no ma, barrier spaces between one state and another. You are not hiding. You are resetting. Recovery is not laziness. It is ammunition. There is a moment that comes to every warrior. The fight has lasted longer than anticipated. Your resources are depleted. Your edge has dulled. And still, the enemy stands before you. In this moment, the untrained man makes a fatal choice. He pushes harder. He digs deeper. He tells himself that surrender to rest is surrender to defeat. And in making this choice, he guarantees his destruction. The samurai understood what you are learning now. There is a time to draw the blade, and there is a time to return it to its scabbard. The warrior who cannot recognize the difference between these moments is not courageous. He is undisciplined, and lack of discipline kills more warriors than any enemy ever could. In 1763, the master swordsman Matsudaira Sadanobu wrote that the greatest victory is the battle you are still capable of fighting tomorrow, not the fight you win today at the cost of being unable to stand tomorrow, not the momentary triumph that leaves you so depleted you become vulnerable to the next engagement, the sustainable victory, the repeatable victory. This requires something your culture has trained you to despise, the wisdom of strategic withdrawal. Sheathing the sword is not retreat. It is the recognition that your capacity to engage effectively has limits, and operating beyond those limits transforms strength into liability. When Miyamoto Musashi faced Sasaki Kojiro on Ganryu Island in 1612, he arrived late, deliberately late, because he understood psychological warfare and energy management. While Kojiro burned his energy in anticipation and anger, Musashi rested. When the fight began, one man was agitated and slightly depleted. The other was centered and fully present. The fight lasted seconds. This is what disciplined rest creates, the capacity for decisive action when action is required. You are in a long campaign, not a single battle. The modern world sells you the mythology of the climactic final confrontation where you pour out everything and emerge victorious. This is fiction. Your life is Sekigahara, followed by the siege of Osaka, followed by decades of maintaining hard-won territory. You need rest protocols that sustain you across years, not productivity hacks that extract 3 exceptional months before you collapse. The discipline of knowing when to sheathe is the discipline of honest self-assessment. Can you engage this task with excellence right now, or are you simply going through motions? Is your mind sharp enough to make this decision wisely, or are you operating on fumes and calling it dedication? The samurai practiced ruthless self-honesty about their state. They did not lie to themselves about fatigue. They did not mistake depleted persistence for warrior spirit. True strength is this: the ability to stop when stopping is strategically correct, even when every impulse screams to continue. To close your laptop when your thinking has degraded to repetitive circles. To end the training session when your form has deteriorated to the point where you are practicing bad movement patterns. To go to bed at the designated hour, even when the task is not complete, because you understand that tomorrow's clear mind will accomplish in 1 hour what tonight's exhausted mind will struggle through in 4. This is not permission for softness. This is the opposite. This is the hardest discipline, to sheath the sword when your ego demands you keep swinging. Every untrained man can push until he breaks. Only the master knows when to stop before the breaking point, rest with purpose, and return sharper than before. Your recovery is not separate from your strength. It is the foundation of it. The samurai who mastered Inemuri did not rest because they were weak. They rested because they understood that warriors who cannot recover cannot endure. And the path you walk requires endurance above all else, not the endurance of the man who merely survives his own dysfunction. The endurance of the warrior who remains sharp year after year, decade after decade, because he understood that the blade that returns to its scabbard stays ready. The blade that never rests becomes decoration on a wall, impressive to look at, but no longer capable of the cut. Sheathe your sword. Rest with the same discipline you bring to battle. Rise sharper. This is the way.